Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Let me see if I can give myself more light here. See if you can see me. Looks like you can. All right guys, I'm doing my reflection from the rooftop garden. This week I wanted to talk about surviving corporate world, corporate America. That's always obviously a candid conversation. That's going to be a candid conversation probably for most women in the corporate world. I'm going to be literally 25 years. I'm short of a month, 25 years, for 25 years of being in the corporate world. So I feel I'm obviously well placed to talk about experience. Potentially it would have a flavor of being a minority person and a woman that has potentially shaped somewhat my experience in the corporate world. At least I know I've always felt the weight of being a minority person, and on top of it, even immigrants, Lord knows what, just the weight of not being an insider. I have always felt that's been a heavy load on my shoulder, and that has shaped my experience in the corporate world. So I want to talk about that. And also, obviously, a lot of young women find me as a role model. They often ask me what's been my experience, what to do. So I thought, why not put it out there, what my experience has been. I would have to say that it's been tough, ultimately rewarding, but the price of that has been potentially superhuman for most people. For most people, they wouldn't be able to potentially endure my experience, because I've just gone through those most part of those 25 years never feeling like I belong. You hear whatever minority women talking about imposter syndrome. It's not self-imposed. It's just people projecting that, like they see you and they're like, what are you doing here? And it's not being paranoid. You really have this form of interaction. As a result, I cannot say that I have made a single meaningful social connection outside of work. So which means I haven't met someone at work that I'm like thick and thin with outside of work. We hang out, we go out, or anything like that. And I do know some of the other people have formed that form of connection. I just suspect that it was a self-imposed. In the world that I was living, people were looking to make connection with people they thought were of value to that organization. Which means if they are one level, they're trying to connect with this level that they find therefore they can benefit from. And if you find yourself as a minority person, you are potentially, from that socialization perspective, not sought after as the person that people want to form the meaningful connection with. point is, in terms of surviving the corporate world as a woman, you can expect that it is possible that the friendship that you see people having, the bond that you see people having, you would be surprised that a lot of invitation that people are having to have lunch, to have dinner, somehow you don't even know about it. Basically, it could be the case for any woman, but I would have to say the first rule in terms of experiencing the corporate world and surviving the corporate world is to accept the fact that it's possible you don't make great friends, even if you've been there for 20, 30 years. You might think, okay, if you're speaking from a minority, perhaps you could make friendship and bonds with other minorities. It's definitely possible. But I was really surprised to see colleagues of the same complexion as I was. They weren't really necessarily seeking to portray this type of bond so that they don't reinforce their position of being an outsider. At least in my case, and many people may experience that, if they have upward mobility ambition, they don't identify you as someone who is in the fast track. Some other person hadn't decided you were going to be this one, perhaps minority person. They were going to, for diversity perspective and whatnot, put there as a poster child. You might find yourself, even people like yourself may not necessarily seek to have that friend. So I think the first thing is to not necessarily expect to create that bond of friendship. So what it means is that surviving work space has to do then with the function of what you are there to do. I know sometimes people don't self-assess themselves really well, so there is always a risk of that. But I would have to say that somehow you're going to find yourself perhaps not advancing, like I say, unless you were lucky and been put on a fast track by a mentor, someone who happened to love you. It's like Moses being found in the water. It's not the norm. You're not going to find yourself advancing as fast as your other colleagues. It's not going to be a personal thing. The statistics do show that. I've done many research on upward mobility, disparity in occupational position, advancement, you name it. It's not just a personal level. It's on the aggregate. It is true that you're not going to advance as fast, if at all, in the corporate world. And that can take a lot of toll on you because it's embarrassing. It's outright embarrassing to see the colleague that you are sitting in the cube with is the one that's commending you, the next day. Like the person you interviewed is the one that's sort of really advancing. It's not jealousy, it's not envy, but you go through it with a sense of shame. It's not self-imposed, but somehow you are ashamed because those people were advancing are looking at you because they're embarrassed to see how great their position is compared to yours, and you somehow embarrassed because you thinking people have less value for you. As human, we want to be validated, not validated in terms of who we are, our self-worth, but in terms of our place in the social circle. We sort of want to have a good role in that. I would have to say this video can be super long, let's say 12. I probably should make it very short, or maybe I'll focus on connection in this, the type of connection you can expect, and maybe I can talk about some other aspect of advancement in some other video. So this video is focusing on the socialization and the extra burden that I have experienced in corporate world as a woman, a minority woman. It's essentially being an outsider, not advancing as our colleague, and the toll that can play in us. And none of this is like active discussion that we have someone. All of these are just, how would I say that? They're just happening in a nuanced way. It feels like, oh, okay, is it my fault? But you know it's not. But it's just somehow how socialization is playing out. Socialization is playing out in terms of, as a minority person, you finding yourself an outsider, and other people inside that circle, they're not going to look good if they're hanging out with the outsider, because everyone wants to be an insider. And that could happen. So what that means then is, okay, you do your best to be an insider. And this is why people talk about being their authentic self, you know, and how hard it is to do that. That's not something I like to listen to hear. Like, there is nothing wrong with your authentic self, so there is no authentic self to give up in order to fit into something that's just basically reject you because of prejudicial societal disposition. That's the type of experience you're going to really encounter that's going to make it emotionally very hard. My point is that in those 25 years, it has not been emotionally healthy. Mentally, it didn't go that far, just because thankfully I am mentally strong in terms of my core value of what my value are. But emotionally, that's been painful. I would have to say emotionally that's been painful. That's been my experience, and I know of many other people. I've said I've been there for 25 years, and if I have to then make a tally of my satisfaction in terms of my profession, what would that be? Surprisingly, in light of the fact that of all those things that I've just explained, fortunately for me, if I have to make a tally of my 25 years, I would have to say that it's been something I'm very proud of. And why is that? I think it's because I saw things for what they are. I just explained to you, it's all as part of the human socialization process and behavior. I'm not going to say it wasn't personal, but what I didn't let happen was any of those weird social dysfunction in a way, workplace dysfunction, that did not affect my performance and the consistency of my production. Okay, perhaps I was fortunate because my work in its nature at the professional level involved independent work, independent thinking, knowledge, leadership. I didn't have someone that could prevent me physically from doing what my training and my persistency in terms of continuing to learn to excel at my craft, that was not affected. Ultimately, although I did not get to have the title that of my peers that studied with me, I would have to say that ultimately, because of my persistence, I gained the respect and almost the admiration. Because maybe people are like, oh my gosh, you're resilient. It's not a great thing, by the way, to say of a Black woman, you strong, you resilient, because what that means is that you are expecting superhuman performance while given subhuman treatment. So that means she can take it. No, she cannot take it. As I explained, emotionally that was painful. I did have some personal value and recognize work for what it is. Work is not my child. So I don't have an innate core emotion for it. It couldn't destroy me. But the idea that, oh, I survive it because I'm a strong Black woman and resilient woman, I don't think that something that I would take that I think is a good characterization of the experience of the Black woman in the corporate world. So I'll just put that out there. Okay, we made of blood and skin. It's hurting us as hell. It so happened that if we see the game, we see the socialization process, we don't take it seriously to the extent of having it destroy us. But that has nothing to do with us taking on blissfully any painful things that's coming our way that we don't deserve, right? So I do want to put that out there. I feel the video is 20 minutes. I probably don't want to go further, but I feel these were like some of the more painful things, yet things that I was able to survive, that someone could experience. I feel like perhaps the world is changing. For some reason, I'm thinking that my daughters are probably not going to experience what I experienced. For one thing, I stayed in an environment for like a very long time, and I see the new generation is all about movement of thought and of initiations and of creativity and independence somehow. So this is why I try not to groom my daughters to just be you know, like, oh my gosh, try to become this vice president in this hello organization. I support them in their creativity, in their creative process, in their ability to be world citizen. Like, I don't care if they just go all around the world saving people here and there. They don't have to slave into some corporate world. By the way, speaking of resilience, I had some very specific health issues that were caused by stress. And I think that's something that even statistics could speak of, how you can have physical reaction, whether you are aware of it or not, from situation where that's unfair to you. Okay, that's unfair to you. In my profession now, as an independent researcher and so forth, and how my work speaks for itself, even with all that, I'm not going to say that I would want my daughters to have a replicate of what my life was. I would want them to have not had to feel like outsiders, not being able to be meaningful part of the social circle that was going on at work. And it's not just because you're trying to be validate yourself as human, it's because it's connected to your advancement, it's connected to your economic mobility, it's connected to the ability for you to create generational wealth. Okay, so when you start with someone on the same level and you potentially producing the same that's left to be open, like I said, people are always talking about differential of quality of production. I'm fully aware of that, but it's not necessarily always justified. That affects your pocket ultimately. It's not just like being validated. Okay, so let's put it out there. When it comes to work, it's really about the paycheck that you get and how high the paycheck is increasing. As you are getting more experience, you're becoming a more productive member of a team. Okay, it's about that. And you want, as human, to be compensated, you want to be promoted, you want to be viewed for, you want the true value that you feel you have and that people know but don't give you because they're busy going to that social scale of things, of being in an circle where people are viewed a certain way and they're looking out for themselves. And when one goes up here, and it's because if they promote this one person here that's in the circle, it's because they know they're going there. But if you out here, you irrelevant to that little, to this game that's going on. So that's how you find yourself, I would say, unfortunately, when you are not part of that social circle, in that higher, different dimension of the workplace. It was maybe a painful topic, but I feel that perhaps that could help someone out there in terms of their professional journey, because at the end of the day, like I said, 25 years I ought to have learned something, and there is no reason why I shouldn't share it now that I have this platform and I can talk about anything I want. All right, guys, so this was a mod thing. If you like my content, please comment. Until next time, bye.